Good morning, Sydney. Hey, how are we doing? You guys ready to learn some cool stuff? Out the back, Scott Harris actually spoke to me earlier. He said, dude, you've got like 75 minutes to transform these people's lives. And I was like, okay, no pressure. But what's interesting is it's a little bit of a challenge. Has anyone ever had a situation before where they've either been somewhere, had a conversation, and something was said and it dramatically shifted the trajectory of your life in a very short period of time? Has that ever happened to anybody? So here's the thing, I've got 75 minutes to impart on you some knowledge, but I'd like to take 75 minutes to completely change your perspective around this thing called business. When it comes to making money, what do you think is the #1 wealth creation vehicle in the history of the world? Value? Business. Business is the #1 wealth creation vehicle in the history of the world. And today I do want to give you guys a deep insight in how to grow them very quickly and even how to start one. Well, listen, I'm not a professionally trained speaker. For the last 18 years, I've been buying, building and selling businesses. A couple of years into me doing this, I worked out that I was really good at growing them very quickly and not without making a few mistakes along the way. And after a couple of years of building businesses very quickly, I started getting people tapping me on the shoulder and say, Kerwin, what is it that you're doing that is enabling you to grow these businesses so quickly? And so about 16 years ago, I actually started teaching other people what it was that I was doing. And I've been an educator for the last 16 years. And I still buy, build and sell businesses. I have a number of businesses. I have an education company. I have a number of other businesses I'm involved in. Another business that I own is a venture capital business. I have a small scale VC where we actually raise capital, support clients through mergers, acquisitions, that kind of stuff. So I've got a pretty good handle on how to grow things very quickly. But the thing that's really important for me to impart upon you, I actually was diagnosed at the age of 7 with ADHD and dyslexia. And that basically means that I get bored really quickly. Can anyone relate to this? So for me, unless things are moving really quickly, I check out. And so I had to learn how to make businesses move quickly in order to stay engaged. Now, as I said before, I'm not a professionally trained speaker, so please don't expect any shebang-a-bang up here. I'm not going to do anything pretty or fast. It's actually going to be a little bit ugly, maybe a few swear words. Anyone here get offended by swearing?
Fuck no.
Fuck no. That's really fucking offensive, brother. That's, look, occasionally the odd swear word does pop out of my mouth, and please understand, I don't mean to be offensive. That's a special added bonus. But it's just who I am. When I get inspired, when I get passionate, you know, occasionally the odd profanity does fall out of my chops, and I apologise in advance for that. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is essentially some of the most potent information that I've got and distilled information. I'm going to be taking you through 2 concepts. One is the 7 steps to fast growth. And who would like to learn the concept that I've used to take about half a dozen of my own businesses and well over dozens of other businesses to 7 figures, in many cases in less than 12 months, with in most cases less than a few $100s spent? Who would like to learn how I did that? Okay, well, I'm going to teach you exactly how I did that, but I'm also going to basically teach you the model that I've been using for the last 16 years to build businesses very rapidly. And after 16 years, I basically worked out that if there are 5 things, if you do these 5 things really well, you'll learn how to grow your business. Your business will grow very rapidly, whether you want to or not. All you have to do is when you implement these 5 things is basically buckle up and hang on. Who would like to learn exactly what that is? Okay, I'll teach you that as well. So, my story in a nutshell, I'll make this really quick because I've only got 75 minutes to give you as much as possible. I have 3 brain injuries and a physical disability. I had a stroke at the age of 34. Within 3 hours of having a stroke, I lost the ability to communicate, and I had a 15-second memory. And the only good thing that a 15-second memory is good for is hiding your own Easter eggs. Oh no, too much? But I wanted to lay that on you because not only did I have a stroke, I actually discovered when I had the stroke that I had 2 other brain injuries that were completely undiagnosed. At the age of 15, I don't know if you can see from where I am, I've got 2 very large scars on my wrists. I got drunk for the first time at the age of 15, but it's really important to know that I was drinking a very masculine beverage. It was called West Coast Cooler. And after my second stubby of West Coast Cooler, a mob of roos went jumping past, and I jumped up to chase the roos down a hill. It was on dusk, I didn't see where I was going. I put my foot in a hole and I fell forward with the bottle in my hand. And I cut all my nerves in my right hand, all my tendons in my right hand, and my main artery. I actually nearly bled to death. I was 13 days off my 15th birthday. And 13 and a half hours of microsurgery later, I was told by the doctor, hey kid, hate to be the one to tell this to you, but you're going to end up with a hand that looks something like a claw. Now, one thing I didn't tell you is I actually failed every subject between year 1 and year 12, and I was an athlete. So I was a sportsman and athlete, I wasn't an academic. But then all of a sudden, overnight, I was told that I was going to be, and his punchline was, he said, I'm sorry kid to tell you, you're going to end up with a hand that looks something like a claw, you're going to be physically disabled for the rest of your life. But don't worry, you'll be eligible for disability pension. Giddy up, right? So, and by the way, what's the 2 most important things to a right-handed 15-year-old boy? Okay, someone's got a dirty mind over here. Okay, to me, the two most important things, the first one was sport, and I couldn't imagine me going out in the football field and going, kick it to me. And the second one was girls, and you know, I just didn't have this incredible vision of walking up to a chick with a tiger's claw and going, how about a back scratch, you know? So that's basically my story. I was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia at the age of 7, as I already said. I was actually told I was learning disabled, and a lot of people actually don't understand what the real definitions of ADHD and dyslexia are. I want to help you out. ADHD means that I have an untapped amount of energy, but I focus on multiple projects at any one time. And dyslexia means that I have the unique ability to look at every problem, situation, opportunity with a very unique perspective that most people can't see in order to see things, do things, and understand things that most people can't even conceive. Does this make sense? Now, this is actually a key to my success. Everything I've told you so far, the disability, the brain injuries, these are the keys to my successes. You know, I actually tell people that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that ADHD and dyslexia are very common in self-made entrepreneurs. Has anyone heard this? You know, I tell this story and people come up to me in the back of their mouth and they go, Kerwin, I want to be really successful, but I don't have ADHD. I'm like, yeah, you'll be fine. But the reason I tell you this is look, I want to connect with you because obviously some of us are going to do business together after today. But I also want you to understand this is my story about why I am successful. And I know there are people out there that have stories similar to mine. Maybe they're worse, maybe they're not. And they're the stories that they use to justify them not being successful. Does this make sense? So the story that you have right now, or the excuses that you're using right now for not pursuing your dreams and your ambitions and your goals, is the same excuse that someone else is using to kick your ass. I'm just not sure if you're aware of this. Does this make sense? These are very important parts of my life. I discovered that I work very well in a job. One of the things that I loved about working in a job is I loved rocking up and knowing what to do, but I hated being told what to do. Can anyone relate to this? It's like this entrepreneurial dilemma, right? And I failed on my own. I'm not some kind of a business prodigy, far from it actually. I failed in my first 3 businesses quite spectacularly. The third business that I failed in, by age 23, I was actually $120,000 in debt. And I had to sell everything I owned. I was evicted from the property that I was living in at the time. My fish died on the same day. And now if you knew, my fish, you know, like this fish was incredible, but that's a whole other story. But I know what it's like to eat shit, and I know the taste very well, basically. So, in a nutshell, the dilemma that I had when I failed in my first business, 3 businesses, is I was trying to do everything on my own. I wouldn't ask for help. I had no plan to follow, and I had no one holding me to a high standard. Can anybody relate to these right now? Now, what's interesting is, why do you think most people get into business for themselves in the first place? Because they want to do something on their own. They don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to have a plan. I just want to be free. And they don't want someone looking over their shoulder. Can anyone relate to this? What I've learned after 16 years of supporting other entrepreneurs to grow their business is these are the 4 greatest symptoms of failure that I've discovered, bar none. These are the reasons why people fail. They try to do it on their own. They won't ask for help. You know, they don't have a plan to follow, and there's no level of accountability that pushes them forward. So the shift that I had, I actually admitted that I needed help. And I actually started working with Peter. And the first thing he taught me was a new way of thinking. He said, Kerwin, your relationship with failure is all wrong. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, you are trying to run away from the very things that you need in order to get to the next level. He said, success is a game of levels. And the price of entry for each level is knowledge and experience. And the only way to determine what knowledge and experience that you need is by failing, because failure is nothing more than an indicator. Peter said, failure is a signpost that will tell you where the skills and the knowledge and the experience gap is, so that you can go and seek the skills and the knowledge and experience in order to get to the next level. Does this make sense? And I was like, well, he goes, your relationship with failure, Kerwin, is all bad. You think failure is bad, and so as a result, you are running away from it. You're ignoring it. You're pretending it didn't happen. And as a result, these things keep on happening, and that's why you fail. You need to start embracing failure. He said, in fact, you need to start chasing failure down and hunting for failure, because failure is where the lessons are, and lessons is where the growth is. So what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today, 2 pieces of content. One specifically is a piece of content that I've used to grow $1 million and multi-million-dollar businesses very quickly. And the concept that I've used, the key method that I've used to do that is a little strategy called a joint venture. Now, has anyone here heard of a joint venture before? Okay, excellent. Or a strategic alliance. Joint ventures are an incredibly powerful way to grow businesses very quickly. But this method, for those of you who are in business, this is literally going to be one of the most potent strategies that you can use to grow your business very quickly, in most cases with almost no spend whatsoever. For those of you who are in a job, this is going to be one of the most powerful strategies that you'll be able to implement into the business that you work inside of to increase your value as an employee, which will warrant you either taking more profit out of the business or asking for a pay raise or even more commission. And for those of you that are actually wanting to get into business, I've had many people that have actually taken this method and this model and actually set up a joint venture brokering business that they've been able to use in order to start making money as a business themselves. So a joint venture is essentially two things. It's two or more businesses coming together for mutual benefit. What do you think the key word is here when I say mutual benefit? Mutual benefit. Win-win. It's got to be a win-win psychology, because what I'm going to show you how to do is essentially tap into other businesses that in many cases are already successful and get them to voluntarily promote your business. Who would like to get other very successful businesses to voluntarily promote your business? Okay, so you've got to understand the concept of mutual benefit. And mutual benefit means you've got to be going into every one of these situations with the perspective of what is in it for the other person first and foremost, and know that you're always going to get a return. It's also hyper-leveraged word of mouth. What is the most potent form of marketing on the planet? Why is word of mouth so powerful? It's trust, right? High trust factor. But the challenge with word of mouth in most cases is limited by the network of the individual that is referring business to you. So you might have, one incredible raving fan, but in most cases this one incredible raving fan will only get exposed to a certain number of people, which in many cases is limited, that is not going to provide excessive volume. What a joint venture is about is finding key businesses that can refer, instead of referring you to maybe one or two or half a dozen or a dozen people, we're looking for key businesses that can refer you to hundreds and in some cases thousands of businesses, in many cases with the use of an endorsement. It's like putting word of mouth on steroids, and it is an incredibly potent way to grow a business. I want to tell you about a client that I worked with that we implemented a joint venture with. I met her husband. Her husband was is a very famous actor and director. I met him in LA at a G'day Australia week. We got talking. He told me about a business that his wife had that was losing at that point about $75,000 every single month, and it was basically, it was burning a hole in his pocket, and he just wanted some help for his wife. So I went into the business, I looked at the business, and the first thing I did is I said, okay, you've got a very successful business here. She was a beauty therapist. And one of the first things I did with her business is I downloaded her I extracted from their database their top 200 to 300 clients, and I looked at their spend. And two things struck me. First of all, I discovered that there are some women that spend as much as $30,000 to $40,000 a year on beauty therapy. Who would agree that's kind of outrageous, right? But there's a lot of women that spend that level of money. But I also discovered that there were a lot of women that actually came back on a very regular basis in order to spend a lot of money. So we basically broke it down, the list of her 200 top clients, we broke it down into a list, and I got one of her staff members to ring every single person on that list and ask them 10 questions. And what we were trying to do is we're trying to actually build what I refer to as the best buyer profile. So we find out who are the clients that spend the most money with this business, and then we ask them questions to find out where else they're spending the money, and then we look for patterns as to where that money is being spent. So with this client, we rang all 200 clients. We only probably got onto about 100. We offered them the $50 voucher to use in store, and we asked them 10 questions. One of the questions that we asked was, what kind of a car do you drive? Another question was, do you own your own home? What do you buy? Do you have kids? Where, do you go to a particular restaurant? Are there any particular hobbies? Do you follow any sports teams? And we were looking for, in the answers, patterns. And the one question that demonstrated the highest pattern was, what kind of a car do you drive? And we discovered that 85% of her clients drove a BMW, Mercedes, or an Audi. So I went back to her and I said, right, we found a pattern. BMW, Mercedes, and Audi are where literally the majority of your clients spend additional money. Do I have your permission to approach these brands? She said, yep, not a problem. So I rang BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, and we put together an offer for BMW, Mercedes, and Audi. And the offer was, it was a $500 gift hamper that they were going to get in order to give to their clients for free every time they bought a car. And it was basically full of sample products, it was full of massages, fat wraps, mini things, big things. It was basically worth $500. Now, let me ask you this question, and I want you guys to be really honest with me. If I offered you a $500 gift hamper full of massages and facials and creams and things and bits and pieces for you to give to every client that did business with you, who would take me up on that offer? Why would you do that? Like literally, most of the room. Why? It's extra value, but who would agree that is a no-brainer offer? Like, it's no-brainer. I'm offering you a $500 hamper. It costs you nothing. All you got to do is give it away every time someone buys. So both BMW, Mercedes, and Audi all said, literally, within the first 5 minutes of the conversation, sounds great, how do we get involved? And I said, just tell me how many cars do you sell every week? I'll get your first shipment out next Monday. So I went back to my client. Now, this client was a very interesting client. We no longer work together, and you'll find out a little bit more about that story. And I said to her, I've now got BMW, Mercedes and Audi all involved to promote your business. Now, who wouldn't mind here having BMW, Mercedes and Audi promote your business for you? What is the benefit of that, apart from the obvious, the clients? It's what we call in marketing land, it's what's called by association branding. When you associate your business with brands that have a prestige perception in the marketplace, it actually pulls the perception of your brand up significantly to the degree of the prestige of that brand. And I don't know about you, but BMW, Mercedes and Audi, they're multi-billion-dollar brands. So I went to my client, I said, I've got BMW, Mercedes and Audi all involved. She said, Kerwin, I've decided I don't want to do it. And I'm like, wow, you don't understand, I just put all this together. Why? She goes, Kerwin, it's going to cost me too much money. I was like, well, how much is it going to cost? We've worked it out. She said, Kerwin, it's going to cost me $176 per basket. I was like, okay. Remember the numbers that I went through with you? And she goes, no. And I said, well, let me take you back. Remember, we discovered that on average, people spend $6,600 with you every single year. That was her average client value. Now, bear in mind, some people spend a few $100s a year. Some ladies spent $40,000 a year. Understanding that she was financed by a very big movie producer and actor, her salon was prestige and it was very top end. Her client average value was $6,600 per annum. And I said, remember, we also discovered that for every 10 people that come into your business, 80% of them actually stay as your clients for 18 months or more. She goes, yes. I said, so don't see it as $176 that you're spending. See it as $176 that you're investing to make $6,600 and contain them for 18 months, which actually makes them worth almost over $10,000. Who understands the maths of what I'm talking about here? Who would agree that is a no-brainer? And she said, Kerwin, I don't care how you wrap it. That's $176 that I could be spending on handbags and shoes. And I was like, I said, how much of this $176 is made up? What's the most expensive part of this package? And she said, Kerwin, the most expensive part of the package is all the sample products. I said, how much do the sample products cost? And she said, the sample products cost is about $172. And I said, okay, give me the number of the person that supplies your products. And it was a very big name company, and I rang them. And I said, I need to speak to the marketing manager. I spoke to the marketing manager and I said, hey, listen, I've just signed a deal with BMW, Mercedes and Audi to do a large-scale promotion, and we want to use your product as the centerpiece in the promotion. Are you interested in being involved? I should tell you before you answer, we are also considering 2 other brands, but we wanted to come to you first because you're our most favorite brand in this space. And she said, let me put you on hold. Put me on hold, came back 2 minutes later, said, I just spoke to the national manager. And she said, yes, we want to be involved, but she's got one question. I said, what's the question? She said, can we roll this out across Australia? I was like, well, let's just fucking start with this. So I went back to my client. I said, $172 gone. And then she goes, well, what about the other $8? I said, well, what the other $8 for? She goes, it's for the gift basket. And I said, well, you're going to have to pay for the gift basket. She says, I don't want to pay for the gift basket. Now, at this point, I knew I was working for my money. And the only reason I was doing it was because of who her husband was, right? And I just said, look, unless we've got something that we can offer the $2 shop, we're going to have to do this deal. Okay, you're going to have to eat the $8 and just factor that we're going to make $6,600. And she goes, all right, I'll do it, but I want you to know, for the record, that I'm not happy. Like, I'm curious to know, when someone says, for the record, is there like some dude that fucking just jumps out of a plane? So I set the deal up, I'm gone, I'm on my way. And then literally 3.5 months later, I get a phone call from this lady who was beside herself. Like she was literally, and I'm like, okay, calm down, calm down. She goes, I'm gonna ring them, they're lying, they're cheating, they're scumbags, car salespeople, like literally going nuts about car salespeople and how they're scumbags and they're liars and they're cheaters. And she said, and the last thing she said was, I'm gonna ring them and I'm gonna tell them. And I just said, don't do anything, I'll be right there. I stopped what I was doing, I literally drove to her business base, and I walked in and there was the door bitch there, her name was Elvira, she was just a whole nother story. And I said, where is she? And I won't say her name, and she said, look, she's out the back, and I walked out the back and she's sitting there rocking on the chair. And I was like, Let's call her Jane. I was like, Jane, are you okay? She goes, Kerwin, you don't understand. This is just not working. This is not working. This is just not working. I said, what's not working? She goes, this deal. I'm sure they're giving it to their friends and their family and they're abusing this. They're abusing this. I was like, but is it working? She goes, it's not working. It's just not working. I said, okay, just take a breath. I'm going to go and speak to Elvira and I'll be right back. So I went out to Elvira and I said, her name wasn't Elvira. And I said, can you do a printout of all of the business that has been generated as a result of the coupons that have come in from BMW, Mercedes and Audi. Now, thankfully, we recorded a coupon against every transaction. She did a printout, she gave me the number. And then I went back in to speak to Jane and I said, okay, Jane, before I actually tell you whether or not this has worked, how much money have you spent on baskets? And she goes, oh, I meant to tell you that. I was like, you meant to tell me what? She goes, well, we stopped using baskets. I was like, what? What have you been using? She goes, oh, we just wrapped it up in cellophane. And I was like, well, that's actually pretty fucking smart. Okay, legit. I was like, okay, that looks pretty. She actually showed me one. I said, okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so how much have you spent on cello wrap and all that stuff? She goes, oh, look, I think it's probably about $480. I said, so about $500. She goes, oh yeah, probably not that much, but let's just call it that. I said, okay, let me tell you how much money you've actually made as a result of this joint venture. I said, take a guess at how much. She goes, oh, it couldn't be more than a couple $100. I said, keep going. She goes, a couple $1,000? Keep going. What? 5 grand, keep going, 10 grand, keep going, 15 grand. Now, let me ask you a question. If you invested $500 in a marketing strategy and you made $10,000 to $15,000 return, who would agree that that's a pretty phenomenal return? Okay, that's an awesome return. I said, you've actually made $360,000 in the last 3.5 months from that promotion. And she goes, oh, I wonder why I was working so hard. So here was the problem. Little Miss Jane wasn't actually used to working. She said, Kerwin, you don't understand my lifestyle. I said, well, explain it to me then. She goes, Kerwin, my lifestyle is I come in and I just flit about. She goes, my girls do all the work, but I've actually lost 4 girls in the last 3 months because of the amount of work that has been coming in. And as a result, now I actually have to work in the business again. And Kerwin, I don't work. And I said, well, you are now. She goes, Kerwin, we just can't do this. It has to stop. She said, normally I'd come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and work, maybe 5, 6, 7 hours. She goes, Thursday and Friday, I'd come in and work for a couple of hours and I'd drink with my clients. Saturday, all I do is get drunk with my clients. I can't keep this up. It has to stop. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So I rang BMW, Mercedes and Audi. It was basically an identical conversation. And I said, hey, listen, first of all, I just want to thank you guys. It's been an incredible promotion. It's been very successful, but it's actually worked too well. We're going to have to stop the promotion. And guess what every single marketing manager said to me? No, you can't stop. And I was like, no, we have to. And they're like, no, you can't stop. BMW said to me specifically, all of our customer numbers are up. Like their metrics for measuring service, they're all up. The principal is over the moon. The only thing we can identify as the culprit is this basket. You can't stop doing this. And I said, we have to stop doing it. And they're like, well, what if we buy the baskets off you? And I was like, listen, the reality is, even if you did buy the baskets off us, the amount of work that this has already generated is going to mean that the level of service that we provide your customers will fall and it won't be a great representation of your brand. I'm just being completely honest. And they all said, thank you very much for your honesty. As soon as you're ready to do this again, we would be absolutely rapt to work with you. Just let us know, because we're super keen to do this. Now, by the way, who would love to have BMW, Mercedes and Audi begging you not to stop them promoting you? Is that a quality problem to have? Huge benefit, huge value there. So who would agree? That's just one story. And I've got literally probably in excess of 100 stories just like this. But who would like to learn exactly piece by piece how I put this together, how I put this deal together? Okay, fantastic. So there are 7 steps to do this. The first step is you need to identify who your best buyers and their patterns. Who are your best buyers? So the first thing we did with this business is we actually got a list of the highest spending clients. Who are the clients that are spending the most money? Who are the clients that are the most fun to work with? And then we asked them 10 questions. What area do you live in? What kind of car do you drive? Do you have kids? Are you a part of any sporting clubs, hobbies? And then from there, we used that information to identify other businesses that were non-competitive. All we did was look at where are the patterns, because we don't want to be going to 100 different businesses. Ideally, we want to be going to no more than 5 businesses, 5 industries. And once we found what those best buyer patterns were, we then actually created an offer that was ridiculously irresistible and hard to refuse. Which in this case was the gift baskets. From there, we approached. Now, the way that I approach with BMW, Mercedes and Audi in every situation was a phone call. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. When you're doing this for the first time, my advice is always to approach with a letter first and an email, and then 2 days later, follow up with a phone call, just to create a couple of touch points before you do it. The 5th step is you've got to sell the deal. Now, in this scenario, it was really easy to sell the deal. BMW, Mercedes and Audi, they were selling me on why I should do it. They basically took the bait and they ran really, really quickly. But depending on the offer that you make, you might actually have to sell the deal. Now, in this instance, I want you to understand this was a very mutually beneficial relationship. Not only were we able to pull out $360,000 worth of new business for $500 spend in 3.5 months, what was the benefit for the car dealerships? Much higher level of customer service, much higher level of customer satisfaction. Because again, imagine you being, who's bought a car at some point in the last 3 years? Okay, did anyone give you a gift when you bought the car? Okay, was it an Audi? No, what was the car? Chrysler. Very few dealers do this, but the ones that do, was it something that you remembered?
Yes, it was a photo.
Because this is the thing, new car, people only buy a car every 3.2 years on average. So car dealers, in this case, they have to work to keep your loyalty. And the same goes for every single business. But you have to sell the deal. Number 6, give it to them for free and use this track. Say, I want to give you my product or service for free. And if you like it, and only if you like it, would you mind giving me a short review? Not testimonial, not endorsement. We use the language review. Now, why do you think we use the language review versus the language of testimonial or endorsement? It's non-threatening language. Like for me personally, when anyone asks me for a testimonial, because I've got a brand, my first thought is, what if this person isn't what they say they are? And I give them a testimonial, or if I give them an endorsement, and something goes wrong, it could reflect really badly on me. But if I'm giving them a review, they may not like what I say. They may like what I say as long as the product is good, but at least then I feel confident that my reputation isn't going to be at stake. Does this make sense? And then lastly, drill the process. When it comes to setting up a joint venture, think of it this way. Here's your business now. Okay, and you're probably working too hard, too many hours for too little return. And every single dot represents 100 people in the market. And the way that most businesses market and advertise is by using a shotgun approach. They're just putting a lot of information out there or a lot of marketing out there. You know, they might be using newspaper, radio, God forbid, yellow pages, maybe even social media, completely untargeted. Okay, maybe direct mail, maybe email. But they're trying to basically communicate with a very large portion of people that in most cases aren't qualified. What a joint venture is really all about is it's about finding ideally other businesses, and look, there's a sweet spot, but ideally you're looking for a sweet spot of businesses that have as many as 5,000. 5,000 customers on their database. And you're looking for 5 of these businesses. And the reason you're looking for 5 is I've found that you can typically only manage 5 high-value relationships at any one time. But the beautiful thing about when you've got 5 businesses that you're working with, all of them have, let's say, on average, 5,000 people on their database. Now, how many people do you have exposure to? 25,000. But if you've done the buyer profile right, these 25,000 are very highly qualified. Now, who's heard of the importance of qualifying clients before you sell to them? But also, it's often a term that is used in sales, but it's a term that is very rarely used in marketing, and it should be. The way that I market any business is I always market to a qualified market. I always promote to a qualified market. And the beauty about a joint venture, especially if you've got 5 clients who have been identified, especially if you've got 5 businesses or 5 partners that have businesses that have been identified based on the spending habits of your best buyers, this 25,000 are very highly qualified. And instead of trying to market to hundreds of people, all you're really trying to, or in some cases thousands or hundreds of thousands, all you're really trying to do is market to get 5 relationships. So the way you get joint ventures is actually through a marketing process. You're marketing for partners, But rather than marketing for 1,000 clients every year, you're marketing for 5 partners every year, and you manage those 5 partners every year, and if you do it well and you have a good offer, they'll send you 1,000 clients. Does this make sense? Now, in most cases, you can do this for very little or almost no ad spend whatsoever. This is literally, hands down, the most potent and powerful way that I've found to be able to build businesses from scratch, or even already established businesses, to multiples of millions of dollars in revenue in very short periods of time. Does that sound exciting? Oh wow, that was just completely blowing me away. Do I have to get you to do a fist pump? Will that help? Just to give you guys some context, 98% of Fortune 500 companies use this strategy. Less than 2% of small businesses use this strategy.